Hi everybody, this is Oksana, and in this video we're going to be making this fun little pendant that uses a small round stone. And this one I made when I was practicing for this video, and I added a little bead to it because there's just kind of a gap there I want it to cover up. But this is the one that I'm going to make in this video. You can add a bead to it if you prefer the look of this. But this is the one we're going to be making here, and here's what it looks like from the back. And before we get started here, I just want to say, if you're not already subscribed, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel, and also don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified of new videos, which I post every weekend. Alright, so let's get started making this pendant. The wire that I'm going to be using is 19 gauge square wire. You can use 20 if you want. It's just a small stone, but I like the contrast of the thicker wire. It is dead soft from realgrande.com, and I'm going to be using 2 pieces, and they measure about 11 inches or 28.5 centimeters. I'm also going to be using half round wire to make my connections. This is 24 gauge half round wire. It's quite thin, as you can see here. And then for my stone, it's a 10 millimeter Blue Goldstone. It's round. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the middle of my 2 wires here, and I'm going to connect them by grabbing my half round wire and just wrapping it around a few times. This is just to make a connection to keep them together so they don't separate when I work with them. And after you've wrapped around a few times, what you want to do is you want to cut your ends so they're both on the same side, like this. And then I'm just going to grab my pliers here, and I'm just going to press down on those wire ends like that. That part is going to be facing the back, and this part with no wire ends, that is going to be facing us. So what we are going to do is start bending this into kind of a round shape. And don't let your wires not be straight up like this. If you need to, you can reinforce them again by pressing it down with your pliers. They need to stay side by side like this. So we're just going to keep bending it into a rounded shape. And in a minute, I'm going to grab my little goldstone here. By the way, fun fact, goldstones come in blue, which is a very dark blue, and they also come in orange. They have little sparkles, and in green, and they are a man-made stone. So if I check right now, my goldstone just comes right through. That means that I need to make this little window smaller. The thing is, you don't want it to be so small. You want it to be just small enough where the goldstone doesn't pop out, but you can still see most of it. So this is good. This is a good size. So once we've determined that, what we need to do is bend these wires backwards. So it's a little bit hard to do. I'm gonna hold one side at a time with my pliers here. And I'm going to bend them kind of back like this, just to get them started at first, and then once I get them started, that's when I can really kind of try to get it better. So we've got the wires kind of going backwards here. Now what we want is, see how this is going flat and then like there's a little bit of an angle here. So you want that to be kind of straight, so they're nice and flat and straight here. So we're just gonna do that. And kind of turn them a little bit. At one point you will be able to just grab them both with your pliers. Because once you've turned them so they're going straight back, you can just grab them with your pliers like this. So now I'm going to grab my stone again. I'm going to make sure everything's still good. It still doesn't come out the front or anything, so that's good. So what we're going to do now is grab these again. Make sure that they're kind of lined up nicely like this, all together, and we're going to wrap around them with our half round wire. So to get the wrap started, I'm grabbing my half round wire and I'm just wrapping the little tail end of it here around all 4 of these wires. And then I'm just going to trim it so that the little end of it ends up here on this side. This is going to be the inside, so it'll get hidden. So I'm just going to press that down a little bit here, but before I press on all the wires, I'm going to try to slide them as far down as I can. Now I'm going to press down on them like this. So now that we got the wire started, to keep going, because this is still connected to the spool, so I don't have to measure and cut it. To keep going, what you do is you just guide it with one hand, and then you just twist the piece with your other hand, like this. And you keep going. We're going to keep going for quite a while, because this needs to go all the way up past the stone and also be our bail. So just every once in a while, just going to press down on this and just keep going. So I'm going to do this a little bit off camera and then I'll show you how tall it ended up being. All right, so mine's a little bit longer now. And if I measure it, it's about 1/2 inch, a little bit more. It's measured in millimeters, it's about 20 millimeters. But what you can do, you don't have to measure it to be exactly like mine. What you can do is put your stone in, and then we're going to bend this. This part is kind of tricky because you have to keep the stone in while bending the wire, and the stone just wants to slip out. But you're basically kind of like pinching the stone in here like this. All right, so I think this got uncentered, so I'm just putting it back. There we go. So the stone is kind of trapped. We are going to do additional steps to really lock it in, because right now obviously this part can come up. And this is going up here because that is going to be our bail. It could have actually been a little shorter. So I'm going to trim my wires here. So that's how you tell how long you want this wrap to go. You want it to go all the way up past your stone, and then you want a little bit here for your bail. So to bend this into your bail, you can bend it by hand. You can use round nose pliers or just something round, or if you happen to have bail making pliers, which is what these are. I'm going to use the third smallest, so 1, 2, 3, this one here. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to grab right below, kind of right where our little wrap is ending here. And by the way, this is where you want the wire end to be, here on the inside. And I'm just gonna bend. Focus on bending the wire around the round nose pliers. Don't close them up too tightly or press them too hard, because it'll like separate these little wraps if you do that. So now I'm just gonna go in here with my pliers and just kind of bend this back a little bit. I'm trying to get my bail to not be so wide, but because I'm using 19 gauge wire, it can be pretty difficult to work with because it's thicker and harder to bend. So now we're going to separate these into 2 and 2 like this. And now it should be a little bit easier to kind of close this tighter. There we go. So you just want to line these wires up with these wires. You don't want them to be in front. So here's what that's looking like. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work with the inner wires here. So these inner wires, you want them to just kind of go on the edge of these 2 wires. Just kind of come down here. Now this is kind of similar to a pendant that I did with round wires, and then when I did that pendant, I actually used these wires to make like a little design and kind of like a little triangular shape down here. I'm not going to do that this time, but if you've watched that design, you can feel free to do that. I'm going to do something a little different with this one. So before I get to those wires, I'm going to do these other ones here. So what I want to do is grab myself a few pieces of that half round wire that we were using earlier, about 5 inches or so. That should be adequately long. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our connections before we do anything else. So if you look, you can see a tiny little gap there. So I'm going to work my wire through the gap. There's usually a gap that gets formed, a super tiny one. At least like here by this wrap there might be one. So you should find a spot where you can work your wire under, even if it's not in this same location. Even if it's like here, then you can move the wire, but first you got to get it under somewhere. So I'm going to put it about halfway. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to feed it through again so that we get this little wrap formed like this. And you can kind of press down on it if you want. And what I'm going to do with this little wire end is I'm going to wrap it around this wire here. Being careful that it stays, you can lift this if you need to, the flat side down and the half rounded side up, and that's okay that there's a little bit of a space there, as you can see, because we can always just push that together. It's more important that you focus on the placement of the wire, that it doesn't get twisted, and you keep with the rounded side up and the flat side down. So now I'm just gonna push them together to get rid of that a little bit of gap that we had there. So I have 3 wraps, And what I'm gonna do is, the wire end for this one needs to be here on the top. So because this is a square wire, it has flat edges. So this top flat edge, that's where we want the little wire end to end up, like that. So not on the front or back. And now I'm just gonna take this other wire, so I'm gonna bring it up here. And what that does is it creates a second wrap right there. And I'm just gonna wrap it around these two wires like this. So you wanna do that at least 3 times, but you can do more if you like the look of it. So I'll do one more time, so I'll just go for 4 little wraps, and then the tail end, you want to tuck that in. So you want to cut the wire, leave yourself a little end, tuck the end in, and then press it down. And just press on all of the little wraps there. Push it together if it got separated. So here is one side done. So now we're just gonna grab the other little piece of half round wire that we cut, and we're gonna do the same thing on this side. So I'm gonna try to find a gap to work that under. I'm gonna pull it through about to the middle. We are gonna work it under again to make a little wrap. I'm just going to press down on that wrap a little bit. I'm going to lift up this little wire here so it's easier for me to wrap around, and then I'm wrapping this 3 times around this single wire here. So 1, 2, 3. Just going to push that together. I'm going to trim the end of it so it's here on the top of the wire. If I'm looking at the top of my pendant, like that. So now I'm just going to bring this wire up, forming that second little wrap, and I'm going to wrap it around these 2 wires here 4 times, just like I did on the other side, so it matches. And then after I've done that, I'm going to trim that and leave myself a little wire end. And I'm going to tuck that wire end in here. So it's on the inside, and just kind of press over all of those wires. So one thing that I noticed is this was in the middle, but it's now a little bit to the side because it can kind of move. So I'm just going to push it back. There we go, nice and centered. So this top portion is almost done. What we're gonna do is just trim these wires because we're gonna make a little loop. So just trim them off and leave yourself a little end like this so that you can grab and curve it with your round nose pliers, and try to get them to be exactly the same on each side. You can measure them or you can eyeball them. That looks the same to me, so I'm good with that. And now I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, and you can swirl them however you do your swirls. You can do a big swirl and just have it like touch all the way up here. You can do a little tiny swirl. I like to squish the little ends of my swirls with my pliers. You don't have to do that. Just whatever you prefer and however you do your swirls. But this is why that little wire end, we put it on the top here, because it's gonna get kind of covered up by the swirl, rather than having to be in the back where you'd be able to feel the wire end. It's kind of inside of the swirl now, so you really can't get in there. So this is my little swirl, and now that I've done one, the difficult thing is to try to make one that looks exactly like that on the other side. Oh, that worked out pretty well. That looks similar. I thought I was gonna have to mess around with it to try to get it to be the same, but no, that looks similar. So all we have to do is finish off these two wires. So you do have that freedom there, since they're crisscrossing here on the bottom, to just do cool little designs here, fill this empty space with beads, whatever you want. Or if you want a cleaner cut look, what we're gonna do is just bend them to the back like this. Just kind of follow the other wires and just curve that inwards like this. And now we're just going to trim those off, just kind of right where it looks like it reaches the edge there, if you're looking straight ahead at it. Like this. We will tuck away that little wire end in a minute here, but first it's easier to do this before you tuck away the wire end. So we're gonna take another piece, about 5 inches again, of the half round wire. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it the flat side facing us, and we're gonna feed it under this wire, underneath that whole back thing. There should be a gap, this should be easy to do. And then underneath the other one. So it's just going underneath everything here on the back. And once you've done that, what you want to do is just hold it here on one side so it doesn't pull through. And on the other side, we're going to wrap it around just this single wire here. So you can use your pliers to help. Again, just hold it here on the side, because otherwise it'll just pull everything right through. So I would probably do at least 4 little wraps, and then once you do that, try to cut the wire end just on the back here. Just try to stick your wire cutters really in there so that the wire end doesn't stick out the side. It's kind of trapped in the back there, and then you can try to press it down, but it might be hard to get in there to press it, so you can just press on this like that. Alright, so this side is connected. Now we're going to do this side, so you no longer have to hold because it's connected there. So I'm just going to wrap around. It really helps to do to use your pliers for this. I find that it's difficult to do this with your hands in this little space. Alright, so make sure that your wire is not getting twisted there, and that it's staying the rounded side up. Mine's starting to get kind of twisted. You can adjust the wire. And I mean, even if it does get twisted, it's not a big deal. It doesn't look that bad, and it's in the back, so don't pressure yourself too much if it's not going your way. So now I'm gonna cut that wire end, try to press down on something here, but it's kind of hard to reach that wire end there. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take these little wire ends and we're gonna turn them so that the end of the wire touches in here, touches these other wires, like that. So now the wire end is hidden away. It's facing the other wires. And on the other side, this one is just a little bit raised for some reason, so I'm just going to press down on it. And I'm just going to press down on this one too. I want everything to be nice and lined up and flat. Okay, so this is the back of our pendant. We've connected those wires. This is the front. I can see a little tiny gap got formed here, so I'm just gonna press down on that. Try and kind of close that up. And that's it. Here's our finished piece. And I just want to show you this other one that I did when I was kind of practicing for this design. It ended up with kind of a little gap on the bottom there, so I added that little bead. It's a 3mm copper bead. So you can do that if you like the look of it, or if you want, you can add a bead in the same manner just up here. Just use half round wire and just kind of wrapped it around. It's up to you, but this is it. This is the finished little pendant, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.